Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, Train Man, and welcome to another episode of TRS 2006, otherwise known as the Zombie Train. We are doing some work out here. This is the last episode for this area, at least for a while. And I did a considerable amount of work, because, believe it or not, I actually worked for over an hour. And you'll notice this video isn't over an hour. That's because I instituted a couple of handy little cuts. One of them is coming right up. So you see me putting all these shrubberies down, and now I'm done. Would you look at that? I did kind of throw that in a little early there, but I didn't want to get too carried away with my actual work. But if you look around here, the place looks a lot cooler than it did before. It's all swampland now, and it's very defined. And we add a couple more finishing touches in a little while. But, right now, I was going ahead and looking for other, I believe other tree splines to layer the area with, and I didn't quite find anything to my liking. That was a very strange one. It didn't quite work right, I guess. We had some very flat ones, which I didn't like, and then I eventually just kind of gave up on that. I got distracted after scrolling through here and finding really nothing that I found interesting. I decided to give up and go work on a different section of the map. So you're going to see me fly over there in just a second. But I need to get the big map out. Alright, so I come over here and start working on this area. As I've said, I was trying to institute a policy of not bring in new assets. Of course, those shrubberies were an exception, just because they looked really good. If they're not there, when I pull all the Mariah's content out, that would be very unfortunate. So this is me, I am very jealous of people with SpeedTree, because this is me clicking, at a very rapid rate to place down a lot of trees at once. So yeah, I worked for over an hour. Some of it was kind of made moot because I didn't like it and I ended up pulling it out, so it's going to be something we're going to have to work on later, and that was the signaling for the area. Now, obviously, these lines aren't going to be very heavily signaled, but for the AI to actually be able to handle themselves, they're going to have signals. So I went down and I threw down a bunch of semaphores. Well, they didn't work right. And the reason they didn't work right, actually, is because they are spaced too far from the track to work with the narrow gauge track. The narrow gauge track comes quite close to itself in a lot of places, and the passing sidings are completely fine. The trains can make it by one another, but the signals don't compensate for that. And so you get trains clipping through signals, and signals clipping through tracks. Well, not trains clipping through signals per se, but you have the signals too close to the adjacent track. So I'm all done with this area now. If you'll see, I'm going to sweep back along it. I didn't make this episode planning on the cuts, so you're just going to have to ignore the fact that sometimes you might not see exactly what you want to see, but next time, when we come through here, you will see it. Or next time, that would be episode 93. Maybe we can do those fun episodes a little bit more often. Whatever. So I come back along here. There were some trees and things. Oh, that's right. I'm not done with this area yet, because I wanted to leave in one of the more frustrating things about the larger tree objects. And that's, they don't slant. Not sure if that makes sense to you right now, but you'll understand it in a second when I get that cluster of trees and put it down, and some of the trunks, not that cluster of trees, you'll see them, you'll know them when you see them because they actually look right. Because some of the trunks are hovering in midair, and some of the trees are buried in the ground. If you look at that one, I'm like, oh, there aren't very many trees here, and then I see that and go, whoa. So I'll undo that really quickly, because they aren't the right kinds of trees, and they were in the wrong spot, and that's just too big, so, oh well. Now we find this cluster. That looks pretty good, doesn't it? So I just start spreading them around. Of course, the cluster is kind of facing the same direction, but it's a forest, and you're not really going to be able to tell. So, I just a couple of them. I try to keep them on the grass there. And then at some point, I realize, that tree is floating. Now, I'm not sure if you see the one I'm thinking of, but yep, I just moused over it. I went, what the heck? So I started lowering the trees, the bundles of trees. That one especially, that was the offender. But those trees are kind of close. I rotated that one. See, this is also where I noticed stuff I screwed up. Another set of trees that are too high. So I set a lot of time working on these trees and getting them right. You can see me sink trees into the ground if you really want to. So just continue watching because I think I left a lot of it in. From here on out, the distance between cuts is actually pretty long. The reason being I wanted to give myself time to talk about stuff because this is a very important episode. Do you guys know what time it is? Do you understand the gravity of the situation? You probably do. It's voting time. So we've got 5 options because we hit a junction. Can you imagine that? We've got more than 4. So we have our Zanzib, or sorry, not Zemzib anymore. We have our Galgora to Lambit. We have our Temeros to Arturo, Arturo. We have our Capst Junction to Motico. And we have our Capst Junction to Olerston. And of course we have Temeros to Portal, rounding out the bottom there. The south side of the map, the farthest south the map is going to get, most likely, except for the Anaconda to Portal. So yeah, that's gonna happen. Also, I renamed the coal mine this episode, and I named a lake. I frankly... It's not that I didn't like the name of the coal mine, I very much did, but I finally built that hill, and thought that Thunder Mountain wasn't a very good name for it. So, I decided to rename it... Well, you'll see. By the way, I did build the hill behind it, finally. It's very different than all these other ones. I started building it normally and then decided, nah, let's go with the old style. So, I got out my hill-making tool and made a lump. So, to go over, because I'm sure you guys will all want to know, and when you see something you like, or when you hear something you like, please post a comment about it. Because that means I'm going to have to tally the votes. And guess what happens when I tally the votes? That means you guys get your say, hey look, dead trees. Boom. I was like, this place needs dead things, so I got some. I did actually put some live trees interspersed through here, but there were more dead trees than live ones. In the end, I'm not sure I loved how it came out, but I think it added quite a bit to the area, just in terms of, like, now you understand there are dead trees in the mud pools, and the living stuff is not in the mud pools. I mean, obviously the mud is not toxic, but, well, you never know. But, whatever, dead trees. I actually do use the other ones as well. But, we have, I'll go in reverse order, actually I'll do the Caps Junction ones last. Because, why not? The current runner, if I read a tie, I believe Temeros to Arturo was one of the ones that I got to do. Or that I will get to do. Also, any ones that are not on the map will be, what's the word? Will not be considered for voting until I'm actually done with both ends of them. Like the Olerston, Susquehanna to Olerston is a line that's not on the map because it's 2-foot gauge, and I didn't intend for the 2-foot gauge to be in here. It just kind of fit. Susquehanna to Olerston is 2-foot gauge. It goes through the cliffside town of Index, which the idea for that was given to me by someone. Please write down in the comments, because you deserve a shout out, because whoever writes down that they got the town of Index, thank you. Unless you're lying. Please don't do that. So, on the top of the list, or really the bottom of the list, we have Tamaros to Portal. Now, this has been on the menu since day one. Of course, it's not a crowd favorite because it's short and boring, and the only interesting part of it is the kind of old line that leads to the farm that we actually go and work on at the end of this episode. I've kind of fixed some of the narrow gauge there. You'll see. So Tamaros to Portal is a slight downgrade. It runs into some forested, not quite as mountainous areas outside of Tamaros, to the south. It's kind of the end of the this range of mountains, which we don't have an overarching name for yet. I'm sure we'll get one eventually. But yeah, so that Tamaros to Portal, slight downgrade into the end of the map, so we can now, once we have that, we can summon trains during the operating sessions and send trains away. Oh, that's something else. Now that I'm doing these once in a while relaxation sort of videos, we're gonna have, I'll be able to say what each of these things adds to the system. So Tamaros to Portal adds, of course, a portal, as well as a small, I guess it would be a grain-producing industry that isn't actually on the map yet, but, or well, it's on the map, but it isn't an industry yet, but it will be. So that's that. It would be an interesting place to run an old local down. Like, not an old local, but a, kind of unusual, or, something local. Was there a cut? Did I miss a cut? I do believe I did, but I'm not entirely sure. Let me check. I did. I just missed a cut. Something happened. Okay. Well, what did I cut out? I can't actually go back to check because I don't have a way of seeing that. Now, you guys saw me doing the little... Oh, I remember what I cut out now. That's right. Some stuff. So I'm on the top of the hill now here. And I started off trying to write ignore me. Because I didn't feel like doing this. But then I realized that I couldn't write ignore me in the way I really wanted to, and it would have been messy anyways, and would have been stupid. So then I go ahead and do it, and you'll see that. But Tamaros to Portal, we have that covered. Galgora to Lambit. Now, this is a 3-foot gauge section that, until you go a great distance, isn't connected to any of the other 3-foot gauge that we have. There may have been a point in time where it was, but it's not anymore. But it goes up 300 feet from Galgora into the semi-mountainous areas around Lambit. Mountainous are really rather hilly and forested. It's up on a plateau. It overlooks El Dorado Canyon for part of the route. You've seen that. We've already built that. And goes back and forth actually quite a distance between the El Dorado Canyon and its river and the Hapston River, which is a temporary name, which runs down from Hapston Cliffs, which is a very large narrow gauge yard. And it runs up to Lambit. It's parts of it are rather steep, but parts of it are completely flat. It's got quite a distance to deal with there. And Lambit is a provider of wood. So raw lumber, raw logs to take down to Galgora and either load directly onto ships if we wanted to do a yard job, or take up to Tamaros and brought to Meest, put on another car. Well, we can't do any of that, but brought them up to Tamaros would be the only thing we can do. Or bring them further up. Yeah, I'm not sure how that would work. Either way, Galgora would be the endpoint for those logs, normally, unless we're doing something unusual. Either way, it gives us another stretch of 3-foot gauge to run. No matter how limited our rolling stock currently is. So, the next in line is the crowd favorite. Recently, Cameros to Arturo, A-R-T-U-R-O, because everyone keeps spelling it. No offense to you guys, it's not something that's easy to spell, especially when I say ch instead of ch. Arturo, not Arturo. My fault, I guess. I mean, I don't suppose you guys would know where that came from, although I believe I've said it before, but it doesn't really matter that much. That is our shout out to Sliders. A rather old sci-fi show. People jumping between universes and such. But Tamaros to Arturo is the continuation of the main line from Tamaros northward. It is relatively straight. It's not it's not a dead straight line, but it's not, doesn't wave back and forth. Well, it does, but subtly. It doesn't have any, strange issues. It's relatively flat as well, although it climbs anywhere from, I haven't figured it out yet, I'll have to figure it out based on the grades, but anywhere from 300 to 500 or 700 feet, depending on how high I can get it without making the grades ridiculous, because I need to get the track that goes by Skyfall Ridge and bring it down to meet the standard gauge and then down into Arturo. Wait a minute. Just kidding, that doesn't happen. I don't know what... Oh! No, I'm sorry. It's not the 3-foot gauge that does that, it's the 2-foot gauge. The 2-foot gauge goes from Ollerston through Sisqueaka to Arturo, and I'm not sure where else. We'll figure that out. I might send more from Ollerston to Emuin, because it would be a very unusual kind of confluence of different ways to get around the map. So, it's... the track work itself is going to be maybe not quite so interesting. I might throw a couple of industries in there along the way. Maybe not. We don't actually have any sort of, well, I don't know. I'm not sure what I'd put in there. Maybe a couple of small producers or a couple of goods receiving things out there, like maybe a gas station. I know, there aren't too many roads going places, and Tamaros itself is very cut off. But I might want to change that and start building highways and things. Or even just secondary roads that kind of weave through the landscape. Either way, I think it'd be interesting to throw an industry or two in there, because it's going to be a very boring route otherwise. The interesting thing about it is going to be the endpoint. The endpoint, Arturo, is the connection between standard gauge and narrow gauge, or it's the second one, of course, because we have Tamaros. But it's not a cargo transfer point, it's actually a pulp mill. So that will give us a lot of opportunities for carrying cargo, changing it into other cargo, and then changing it back. Or not changing it back, and then bringing that somewhere. So we have that pulp mill. That could make things interesting. Once again, it has all three kinds of trackage. We have 3-foot gauge, 2-foot gauge, and standard gauge. I almost said 1-foot gauge. And standard gauge up there, so that's Thunder Mountain in the back. Not Thunder Mountain. That's Heavy Hill. So I decided to name the place Heavy Hill. I wasn't sure if I had named it, which is why I paused there like, oh wow, I forgot I named this place. But, yeah, Heavy Hill. Heavy Hill overlooking Sisqueaka. Once we get to Arturo, Arturo is actually a connection that goes, if we do Arturo, it will open up 1, 2, 3, 4 options. You'll have Arturo to Hapston Cliffs, Arturo to Meest, although no, I think Arturo to Meest will be done, Because there are two versions of that. One is standard gauge and one is narrow gauge, 3-foot gauge. But I'm not sure if I want to do them both at once or separately. So Arturo to Meast possibly ×2. And Arturo to Sesquica with the 2-foot gauge. Now that would probably be an easy project because we'd have 2/3 of it at least done already. Alright, so, moving on. Caps Junction to Modico. That's an interesting one. It's the narrow gauge main line, the narrow gauge wood carrying main line that runs through Caps Junction. It goes along a river when the river crosses under it and then drops away, which actually then goes to meet with the 2-foot gauge, the river does. Continues on through the scrag forest, through valleys, and over bridges. The terrain is quite like the stuff we have been working with, quite like what you're seeing right in front of us here. So yeah. And then it ends in Modico, and Modico is probably a project that we tackle on its own, because it is on my paper, it's a 2-block station, which means the area is going to be pretty large. And I don't mean 2 tile or 2 baseboard, because Temeros is a 3-block, and that took up 9 baseboards when we did it just on its own. So that's really no indication, especially considering it might not be in a good place. And it's diagonal. It's like Sesquica in that it isn't lined up with the grid at all. So Modico. Modico is also the lumber mill. So the only one on the map, unless I decide to put another one in. Modico is the lumber mill. It's also a through point for passengers that are traveling on the narrow gauge, what few that still do. The standard gauge is faster no matter where you travel. But we've got a rather large yard, so yard operations involving the lumber mill, as well as carrying logs to and lumber and wood chips from the lumber mill. Modico is also a junction. It would open up 2 more. So we'd have Modico to Meast and Modico to Scragcap. We're going to need a new name for Meast once we get there, but that'll be settled after I build the place, because I'm no longer able to remember the names that you guys are giving me. Now, you'll notice I'm naming this place Sterling Y. That is in homage to Lindsey Sterling, the violinist. And the mountain is now, whatever name it was before, disregard that. It is now Sterling Hill. Or Sterling Mountain. Mount Sterling. Mount Sterling sounds pretty good. Sterling Hill also sounds pretty good. Makes me think of Sherman Hill. But I think we're gonna go with Mount Sterling because that's not quite a hill. So come down here, I'm checking this track to see if it would make a good endpoint for a switchback, which it does. And that's when I go down here and start editing this area. Now, if you remember the roller coaster that I built, it has grades up to 23%, but I decided that it's time to change that and make this 2-foot gauge a little bit more livable and a little more real. So I start by carving in a little plateau on the edge here. And then there's a cut. So you'll see it when it's all done. Boop. Okay, maybe not quite so done. We've got trees. We've got way too many trees, and I'm just trying to nudge them out of the way to make a through path for the railroad. So I start bringing it down. If you notice, I removed all the other trackage, and I'm adding just my own now. Or rather, just new track. Accidentally held shift there. Always go to the wrong tab when I want to move the trees. I'm trying to keep all the trees in generally the same area that they were and keep the same number, because I think it did come out pretty good. And then I realized at one point that opposite sides of this hill are two different tree sets. One of them is the same, and the other one is all these different ones. But that essentially is that new route. I did always want to put something on the side of the lake. Now we have the ability to, and we did. Still don't have a name for the lake, though. And once I think of one, then I'll put down track marks, and only once I've put down track marks or an industry is that name close to being locked in. I'll never lock something in for life. If I come up with a better name, it's going to get a better name. The final of 5. Caps Junction to Ollerston. It is the other direction of the narrow gauge main line. 2 tracks. No ascent, but due to Caps Peak being there, there is some elevation change. So you go up, and then you come down. Ollerston is also the headwaters for this river that feeds into that lake right there. Don't quite have a name for that either, though I may have at some point. Eldorado River maybe, because it goes through Eldorado Canyon, but I don't want to name all the stuff the same thing. I'd like to have different varied referencey names. We're going to have plenty of Doctor Who references once this new season starts, which is tomorrow, for the record. Whoop, whoop. So, Caps Junction to Ollerston provides an excellent point. It is a dead end. It ends in a balloon loop in order to turn the trains around. It runs through a very busy not lumber operation, but a forestry. And the use of that would be right now, if we were to do that one. Well, you know what? I'll cover each one's individual strength on its own right now, but in the grand scheme of things, Ollerston would be the connection for the 2-foot gauge as well. It'd be kind of the high point in the route. You might see it start descending if I continue to like putting in the 2-foot gauge. It's been fun so far. By the way, we do have one of those weird trestles over there still, where the roller coaster used to be, but it's better, significantly. Ollerston would be giving logs through Caps Junction to Monaco. And wait, I'm gonna fix the switch. Yeah. Alright, so oh wait, I didn't fix it. I thought I did. When am I going to grab that? Yes, there we go. So, individually, and with a summary, because we only have about 2 minutes left. Galgora to Lambeth, ascent of 300 feet. Single track, 3-foot gauge, forestry. Tamaros to Portal, slight descent, double track, standard gauge, portal. Grain. Minorly. Tamaros to Arturo. Double track, standard gauge, no ascent. Pulp mill. It's like I'm a pop quiz or something. Game show. Caps Junction to Monaco. Double track, narrow gauge. A descent of 100 feet. Yard and lumber mill. Caps Junction to Ollerston. No ascent, double track, narrow gauge, not lumber, forestry. So we've got 2 forestries in the running. We've got a pulp mill and a lumber mill, so we were about to complete our wood cycle if we just stick with these options here. Although it won't all be connected. So we'll have to figure that out. I was checking to see if this place had a name. Doesn't yet. It'll have to get one. I was trying to think of one, but I eventually gave up. If you look at our roller coaster over there, it has a grade of about 3%, so it's much better than the 23% grade from earlier. And now I was just trying to figure out what else to do, because I had some extra time to kill. I ended up cutting it all out because it was all signals, and then I pulled them up anyways. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And be sure to leave your votes in the comments below. One more time, that's Galgora Lambeth, Tamaros Arturo, Caps Junction Modico, Caps Junction Alderston, Tamaros Portal. Try to spell them the best you can. Can't spell it, don't worry. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Man, the timer is counting down, but I never thought it would end this soon. Trend Matt out.